"You can keep the horse," the cowboy said, his voice cutting through the stockyard. "But before you hand over your sister, answer me this. What kind of man sells his own blood for a saddle?" The whole auction pen went silent. Even the mule tied by the rail stopped stamping. Dust hung in the noon light. A loose sheet of tin clattered somewhere behind the feed store. Heat rose off the boards in wavering sheets, bringing with it the smell of manure, horse sweat, and old smoke. The girl standing in the pen with her wrists bound did not lower her eyes. She looked at the man who had spoken as if she were measuring whether he was brave, foolish, or both. Her brother laughed first, but it came out thin, the kind that plans to eat through winter. The horse trader beside him spat into the dirt. "Mind your business, cowboy." The cowboy stood with one hand on the rail, hat brim low, jaw scar half hidden by stubble. Dry Hollow knew him as Eli Mercer, the colt breaker who lived alone south of town and spoke less in a week than most men did before breakfast. He did not look rich enough to challenge a bargain, and he did not look drunk enough to forget the danger in doing it. He looked like a man who had seen too much once and refused to look away now. The girl's brother, Owen Vale, tightened his grip on the dun gelding's bridle. Sweat darkened his shirt, but shame did not touch him. "She owes family work," he said. "Horse gets us seed hauled before the rains." "That what she is?" Eli asked. "Work?" A murmur rolled through the crowd. Women on the dressmaker's porch stiffened. The blacksmith leaned in his doorway. Two boys stopped their wrestling near the pump. The sheriff did nothing, which told everyone he had already decided to let the thing pass if no blood was spilled. Then the girl spoke. "Ask him what he sold before me," she said. Her voice was rough with thirst, but steady. "Ask him about the silver from our mother's Bible." Owen's face flared red. "Shut your mouth, Maren." Eli looked at her properly then. Dust streaked the hem of her blue dress. One lip was split. A fading bruise ringed one wrist above the rope. But she stood straight, chin raised, like the pen boards were church planks, and every pair of eyes on her would someday have to answer for it. Something old shifted under Eli's ribs. The trader shrugged. "Kin says she goes. I got no use for tears, but I can use labor. Cooking, mending. Maybe sell her farther south come spring." That was enough. Eli stepped through the rail. Leather creaked. He pulled a folded banknote from his pocket and held it up between two fingers. $2 for the rope. The crowd sucked in breath. The trader barked a laugh. $2? For a woman? "No," Eli said. "For the insult of hearing you price one." A few men grinned despite themselves. Owen did not. His hand drifted near the pistol at his belt. Maren saw it. So did Eli. "You making sport of me?" the trader asked. "I'm making a choice," Eli said. "Take the money. Keep the horse. Let the girl walk. Or tell this town out loud that two grown men need a tied woman to settle their bargain." Wind pushed through the yard, carrying dust, molasses from the bakery, and the hot metal scent from the smithy. Nobody moved. Dry Hollow liked excuses. Eli had just stripped them all away. The sheriff cleared his throat. "Mercer, you aiming to start something?" "No," Eli said. "I'm aiming to stop it." Maren twisted her bound hands against the rope. Owen saw and grabbed her arm so hard she flinched. Eli's eyes sharpened. "Let go. She's my sister. Then you ought to know how to hold her without bruising her." The trader reached for the money. Owen stopped him. "No. Horse first." That refusal said more than all his excuses had. He did not need a horse for hauling. He needed debt erased. He smelled of whiskey and fear. "What debt?" Eli asked. Owen said nothing. Maren answered for him. "Gable Pike. Card game 3 nights ago. He lost the wagon, then the mule, then me." Silence dropped harder than before. Everyone in Dry Hollow knew Pike. Freight boss. Gambler. Extortionist. A man who bought loyalties cheaper than bullets and spent both just as easily. If Maren was being traded through one of Pike's men, this was not a family bargain. It was delivery. "Untie her," Eli said. Owen gave a nervous laugh and drew his pistol halfway. "Walk off, Mercer. This ain't your blood." He never got it clear. Maren stamped his foot with the heel of her boot and slammed her shoulder into him. The pistol fell into the dust. Eli lunged, seized Owen by the collar, and drove him back against the rail so hard the boards groaned. The trader stumbled away with both hands raised. The sheriff shouted too late. A horse screamed from the hitch line. Eli held Owen there and asked again, low and deadly, "What kind of man sells his own blood for a saddle?" Owen's breath came ragged. The kind that doesn't want Pike killing him. Eli shoved him off and snatched the fallen pistol, tossing it butt first to the sheriff. Do your job. The sheriff hesitated, hating every eye on him. Owen Vale, you'll come with me until this is sorted. Sorted, Maren said. Pike's riders are already coming. He doesn't lose what he thinks he owns. She turned to Eli then, and for the first time the iron in her face cracked enough to show the fear beneath. If you mean to buy me a minute, she said, you'd better decide what you're willing to pay for the hour. Far off, beyond the church and the cottonwoods, came the low thunder of approaching horses. Nobody in the yard needed telling what that sound meant. The hoofbeats came thin at first, then heavier, rolling over the north road until even the sheriff lost color. Women began snatching children off the street. The trader slipped away sideways, leaving his bargain and his courage behind. Owen sagged when iron touched his wrists, not from guilt, but relief that someone else now stood between him and Gable Pike. Eli cut the rope from Maren's hands with the knife in his boot. The skin beneath was raw. She rubbed her wrists once and looked north. How many? He asked. Pike keeps 4 close when he wants fear, she said. 6 when he wants a lesson. And today? She watched the emptying street. Today he'll want witnesses. The sheriff swallowed. Bring her into the jail. We can bar the door till sundown. Maren gave him a look sharp enough to cut hide. Then he'll burn it with us in it. Eli believed her. He had seen Pike's work before. Wagon hoops blackened by fire, a cook dead with his wrists tied, a camp turned into a warning. That had been years ago, before Eli swore off carrying other men's wars. But trouble had a way of finding the shape of a man who pretended to be done with it. He drew Maren behind the water trough, out of the sheriff's hearing. Tell me everything. Fast. She did. Their mother had died in March. Their father had gone years earlier in a mine collapse. The little patch of land outside Dry Hollow might have held if worked carefully, but Owen gambled grain, borrowed money, and then borrowed against the next season too. Pike liked men like that. He settled debts in exchange for acreage, service, or flesh. After Owen lost the wagon and mule, Pike offered him mercy with a knife hidden inside it. Deliver Maren through one of his traders, and the debt would vanish. You could have run, Eli said. To where? She snapped, then checked herself. I tried. Owen found me at dawn and tied me to the feed post. He studied her. Under the fear was calculation. Under the anger was backbone. She was not waiting to be saved. She was searching for exits. Can you ride? Better than Owen. Better than most in this town. Shoot. Enough not to miss when it matters. Eli looked toward the livery, where his gelding stood saddled in shade. He could leave now. Put Maren on the horse, cut west through the wash, reach the river road by dark. Pike would have to choose between pursuit and terrorizing Dry Hollow. But Pike would come back. That was the knot in the road. Save one life today and condemn the town tomorrow, or stand and carve deeper into the rot than anyone had dared before. Safety or honor. Escape or reckoning. Mercer, the sheriff called. Well, Eli stepped back into the street. You got a cell strong enough for Owen? Yes. Then hold him. And listen close. When Pike comes, you either arrest him for coercion and trafficking, or you admit in front of every soul here that your badge is nothing but tin nailed to cowardice. The sheriff flushed. Men looked at their boots. Maren stared at Eli as if seeing a different man than the quiet one who broke colts at the edge of town. That a speech, she murmured, or a suicide note. Depends whether Dry Hollow remembers shame. He turned to the blacksmith. Jonas, I need chain, nails, a hammer, and every bucket you own. To Widow Beale outside the bakery. Get children inside and fill water barrels. To the stable boys. Bring the gray mare to the rear lane and loose the alley gate. Orders came out of him with the ease of old habit. The town heard command and obeyed before pride could object. That told Maren what he had once been without him saying it. While the hoofbeats grew louder, Eli and Jonas worked fast. They stretched chain low across the narrowest part of Main Street, hidden behind drifting dust. Eli hammered nails through 2 short boards and tucked them beneath feed sacks in the side lane. He had no intention of killing horses for the sins of the men riding them. Maren reappeared carrying a shotgun and a pouch of shells. You didn't ask if I wanted in. I assumed you were too sensible. Then you guessed wrong. She cracked the gun, checked both chambers, and closed it again. Pike sends one smiling man to talk, while the others drift wide. Don't watch the smile. He nodded. Useful truth. Better than thanks. You can still take my horse and go, he said. West Wash. Less open ground. She held his gaze. And spend the rest of my life waiting for him to find the next place? No. My brother traded me because he thought I'd bend. Pike wants the same. I'm done proving men right. Respect moved through Eli, quiet and unwelcome only because it came with danger. Then stay behind cover. Shoot only if you must. That was my line for you. The first riders entered town through a haze of copper dust. There were 5. Enough for fear, not war. Gable Pike rode center on a black horse slick as oil. He wore a pale gray coat despite the heat and gloves the color of dried blood. His smile reached the crowd before he did. It never reached his eyes. Afternoon, he called, as if arriving for a wedding. Heard there was confusion over property. Maren's fingers tightened on the shotgun. Eli stepped into the street. You heard wrong. Pike's gaze slid over him, then fixed on Maren. Miss Vale, I paid a debt. I dislike clerical errors. Then take it up with a ledger, she said. A few townsfolk drew breath at her nerve. Pike laughed softly. There's spirit. I admire spirit. Right before I break it. Eli shifted half a step, blocking his line to her. Seems to me the only thing broken today is your reach. For the first time, Pike's smile thinned. You know who I am? I know the smell of men who buy courage wholesale. The air tightened. Pike lifted one gloved hand. 2 riders drifted wider without hurry, circling toward the side lanes exactly as Maren had warned. Then Pike pointed toward the jail where Owen was being dragged inside. You have until sundown to hand me the girl and the fool who sold her. Otherwise I come back with enough men to salt this town flat. He turned his horse as if the matter were settled. Eli watched him go, feeling the shape of a siege in every step of that retreat. Then he saw Maren go pale. Sundown, he realized, was not the worst thing Pike had planned. The moment Pike rode out, Dry Hollow shattered into frightened motion. Doors slammed. Buckets rolled. Someone started praying loud enough to hear and ashamed enough to stop. The sheriff asked 3 useless questions in a row. Eli ignored them all and watched Maren instead. She had gone still, not weak, but listening inward, like some memory had just ridden back into her. What didn't you say? Eli asked. He won't wait till sundown if he thinks we're ready, she said. He circles the ridge, then strikes from 2 sides near dusk. If he's angry, he sends one ahead to start the fire. Jonas swore. Widow Beale clutched her apron. Eli looked at the row of wooden storefronts and saw a graveyard waiting for a spark. Buckets on every roof, he said. Blankets soaked. Jonas, 3 men on the church, 3 on the livery. Sheriff, guard the jail and keep Owen alive long enough to testify. The sheriff bristled. You don't give me orders. Eli stepped close. Then hear it as a warning. If Pike reaches that cell before morning, your name will be spoken with spit for 20 years. That landed. The sheriff swallowed and obeyed. Maren turned toward the alley. Eli caught her sleeve. Where? Schoolhouse roof. I can see the north ridge from there. If their scout sees you, then he'll learn I don't hide well in skirts. It was reckless. It was also the best idea available. They slipped through the alley behind the mercantile, where onions, horse urine, and old rain soured the air. Flies lifted from warped barrels as they passed. At the abandoned schoolhouse, Eli boosted Maren onto the roof, then climbed after her onto shingles hot enough to burn through his shirt. For a minute, there was only wind and distance. Sagebrush shimmered silver green. The north ridge wavered under the sun. Then Maren touched his arm. There, a flash of glass among the rocks. Spyglass, she whispered. Can you see him clear? Clear enough to know he's waiting. Before Eli could stop her, she rose on one knee and waved a strip torn from her blue sleeve. The scout jerked in surprise. The rifle shot came at once. Shingles exploded beside them. Maren dropped flat, breath rushing out in a laugh that sounded more furious than frightened. Now we know his hand, she said. Another shot cracked lower. Move. They slid off the far side of the roof, just as a third bullet punched through the rotten eave. Eli hit the ground, rolled, and came up with his rifle. Smoke from the scout's muzzle gave away the rocks. Eli fired once. Dust spat up. No cry followed. Missed, Maren said. Close enough to hurry him. They ran back toward town as church bells began pounding from the steeple. The warning rolled through Dry Hollow like iron thunder. Then came a second sound from the south, smaller than thunder and uglier than weather. men whooping for fear, not joy. South too, Eli said. He brought more. The first flame struck before they reached Main Street. A bottle shattered against the feed store wall, fire climbing the dry boards in a sudden orange rush. Smoke boiled low and oily, thick with kerosene and singed grain. Bucket lines formed. Horses screamed from the hitch rail. Then the riders came. 2 from the north at a hard charge. 3 from the south lane. Pike nowhere visible. Chain! Eli shouted. The north pair hit Main too fast. Their horses struck the hidden chain and went down in a tangle of screaming legs and dust, pitching both riders flat. Before either man could rise, Maren stepped out from behind the trough and leveled the shotgun. Stay down. One reached anyway. She fired. The blast tore off his hat, bloodied his ear, and buried shot in the dirt beside his cheek. He flattened instantly. She could have killed him. She chose warning instead. A southern rider burst through the alley and hit Eli's nail boards. His horse reared and threw him into the mercantile post. Eli lunged, smashed the man's wrist with the rifle stock, and kicked away the pistol. Gunfire cracked from above. Eli spun. Widow Beale's nephew cried out and clutched his shoulder on the bakery roof. Shooter in the hotel. Jonas roared. Maren was already moving, sprinting through smoke with the shotgun broken open in one hand. Eli saw the choice hit her. Save the wounded boy or chase the hidden marksman. If the shooter kept the rooftops pinned, Pike's real entry would come through fire. If the boy bled out, fear would break the line. Maren! She looked once. Eli jerked his chin toward the boy. He would take the shooter. She changed course at once and climbed the bakery ladder 2 rungs at a time. Eli cut through the smoke into the hotel. It smelled of stale whiskey, lamp oil, and panic. Floorboards hammered under his boots. Another shot cracked overhead. He took the stairs hard, ducked the doorway, and slammed into a room full of drifting haze. The gunman turned too late. Eli hit him shoulder first, driving him into the wall. The revolver fired into the ceiling. Plaster snowed down. They grappled in close, fists, elbows, hot breath, boots sliding on warped boards. The gunman clawed for a knife. Eli trapped the wrist, drove his forehead forward, felt cartilage break, then shoved him through the window. Glass exploded outward. The man crashed onto the awning below and rolled into the street. At Pike's horse's feet, because Pike had been there all along. He sat in the smoke, black horse still, revolver low. Townsfolk froze. Maren froze on the bakery roof with blood on her hands from binding the boy's shoulder. Eli stood framed in the broken hotel window, rifle empty, no cover, no clean shot. Pike looked up and smiled. Then he raised a burning torch toward the jail where Owen screamed behind iron bars. No! The cry ripped from Maren before anyone else moved. She flew down from the bakery roof, boots hammering the ladder rungs. Eli vaulted through the broken hotel window to the awning, then to the street. Pike rolled the torch once in his hand, savoring the moment. Smoke ribboned around him. Inside the jail, Owen pounded the bars and begged for mercy. He had never shown his own sister. Your brother for the town, Pike called. That seems fairer than most bargains I offer. Maren went white beneath the soot. Eli saw it clearly. Pike did not just want Owen dead. He wanted Maren to watch, and worse, to choose. That was the cruelty of him. He made wounds testify against themselves. Eli stepped forward with both palms open, the way a man quiets a dangerous horse. Burn that jail, and the sheriff talks. Your hard men talk. Folks here remember every face. Only if they live long enough to enjoy the memory, Pike said. He tossed the torch. Maren fired. The shotgun blast caught the torch in midair, scattering burning oil into the dust before it reached the jail wall. The crowd gasped. Pike's horse shied. Eli lunged, seized the bridle, and ripped hard. Pike swung the butt of his revolver into Eli's temple. White light burst behind Eli's eyes and sent him to one knee. Then Jonas hurled his blacksmith's hammer. It missed Pike's skull by inches and smashed into the jail post with a crack like splitting oak, but the miss did its work. Pike's horse reared sideways. Maren snatched up the fallen torch blanket and kicked it under the trough. At last the townsfolk surged. 2 men tackled one of Pike's riders. Widow Beale swung a bucket yoke like a club at another struggling to stand. Pike saw the tide shift and wheeled into the east lane, firing once over his shoulder. The bullet tore Eli's sleeve and buried itself in the dust. He's heading for the wash. Maren shouted. Eli got up too fast and staggered, then steadied. You stay? No. That wasn't a request. She came straight at him, smoke in her hair, fury bright in her eyes. And I'm not your hired hand. Pike knows every gully east of town because he used my father's survey maps to run freight around taxes. He made me copy them. You want him caught, you need me. That stopped him. The sheriff emerged from the jail with Owen at gunpoint and confusion all over his face. What now? Now you prove this town can finish something, Eli said. Lock every captured man separate. Keep buckets moving. If Pike comes back, ring the church bell until your arm falls off. Then he looked at Maren. Gray mare. Rear lane. 1 minute. She almost smiled. That sounded dangerously like agreement. Don't grow fond of it. They rode east beneath a sky turning brass, following Pike's sign through the wash where cottonwood roots gripped the bank and sand still held dampness from last week's rain. His black horse had been pushed hard. Tracks bit deep. Here and there dark flecks marked the stones. Blood, horse or rider, Eli couldn't tell. As the light cooled, the town behind them shrank to a smudge of smoke and faint church bell echoes. Crickets started in the weeds. Maren rode close enough that Eli could hear the rasp of her breathing over the creak of leather. At a bend where the wash narrowed, she raised her hand. Listen. He heard water under stone, then the soft clink of tack above. They dismounted and climbed on foot through juniper and shale until they found Pike's camp tucked beneath an overhang. 1 horse, 2 bedrolls, a crate of cartridges, and hanging from a nail in the rock, wrapped in oilcloth, a leather map case. Maren stared at it, as if she had found a grave left open. My father's, she whispered. He carved that notch into the clasp after the flood year. She crossed slowly and touched the leather with trembling fingers. Inside lay survey sheets, route notes, debt tallies, names, dozens of names. Farmers, freighters, a deputy in Santa Rosa, 2 county clerks, even the sheriff of Dry Hollow. Payments sat beside each name like wrought on a ledger. That's how he owns them, Maren said, voice gone thin. And how we break him, Eli answered. A twig snapped behind them. They turned together. Owen stood on the ledge above, wrists still cuffed, chest heaving. He must have stolen a horse and followed. Sunset burned behind him, turning him into a black cutout against the sky. Shame had finally found him, but it wore a desperate face. You can't take those papers, he said. If Pike hangs, he'll tell what I signed. Maren looked at him as if she could split him with a stare. You sold me, and you're worried about your name? I was scared. So was I. Silence filled the camp. Water tapped faintly below in the wash. Eli saw the pistol tucked into Owen's belt, likely stolen from one of Pike's men. Another choice opened at their feet. Shoot a frightened fool before he ruined more lives, or trust that blood and guilt might stop his hand. Eli lowered his rifle instead of raising it. Owen, he said quietly, if you want one honest thing left in your life, step down and give me the gun. Maren stared at him, shocked by the mercy. Owen's mouth trembled. Tears cut pale tracks through the dirt on his face. For one long second it almost seemed he might choose decency. Then Pike rose from the shadows behind the overhang and put a knife to Maren's throat. That, he said softly, was touching. The world narrowed to the bright line of steel beneath Maren's jaw. Pike held her close, one gloved fist twisted in the back of her dress, the knife angled just enough to promise blood. His smile was gone now. In its place was something colder, wounded pride. Men like him forgave bullets quicker than defiance. Eli did not lift his rifle. Too far. Too risky. Owen stood above them on the ledge, shaking so hard the pistol in his cuffed hands knocked against his belt buckle. Drop it, Pike told Eli. Eli let the rifle slide into the dust. Kick the papers over, Pike said to Maren. Slow. She did not move. The blade pressed tighter. A bead of blood traced down her throat and slipped into her collar. Owen made a broken sound. Do it, Mare. Please. Her eyes cut to him, hard and blazing. In them lived every hungry winter, every fence mended, every lie swallowed, so the house could stand one more day. You don't get to ask me for anything. Pike laughed softly. Family. Always disappointing. Eli kept his voice level. You won't leave this wash alive with those papers. Your men failed. Dry Hollow saw your face. It's over. Over. Pike said. No. Changed. He looked up at Owen. You brought yourself here. Good. Shoot Mercer. and I might still cut your debt in half. Owen froze. There it was again, the same poison that had started it all. Fear traded for obedience, weakness disguised as survival. Maren saw it too. Nothing ended unless somebody broke the pattern clean through. Eli thought of old fires, of screams carried by the wind, of years spent confusing loneliness with penance. Maybe redemption was never a feeling. Maybe it was only the next hard thing done honestly. Owen, Eli said, never taking his eyes off Pike. Your sister stood up when nobody else did. This town finally stood up with her. You can die the man you've been, or live 1 minute different. Choose fast. Pike shifted the knife. He's too weak. Maybe, Eli said. But weak men get tired of hearing it. Owen's breathing hitched. His gaze moved from Pike to Maren, then down to the papers at her feet, then to the cuffs around his wrists. Eli could almost see the bad bargains passing through him one by one. When Owen spoke, his voice shook. Mayor, I'm sorry enough to know it ain't worth saying. Pike sneered. Pathetic. That word decided it. Owen fired. The shot went wild, but it snapped past Pike's ear close enough to turn his head. Eli moved on the sound, diving for the rifle. Maren drove her heel backward into Pike's shin and tore free as the knife slashed only cloth. Pike lunged for the map case instead of for her, choosing power over flesh. That choice ruined him. Eli came up on one knee and fired once. The bullet struck Pike high in the chest. He staggered back against the rock wall, fingers clawing at the spilling papers around his boots. Shock crossed his face, then fury, then a childlike disbelief. Men who live by owning others rarely imagine a world where they can be taken from. He slid down the stone and sat there, staring at the dark stains spreading through his gray coat. You should have burned them, he rasped. Maren stood over him with one hand at her bleeding throat. No, she said. You should have feared the living more than the truth. He tried to answer, but blood filled his mouth. A moment later he sagged still. The wash went quiet except for the horses and Owen's ragged sobbing above. Eli lowered the rifle slowly. His hand shook after, never during. Maren saw it. She saw more than he wanted shown. You hit, she asked. Only old places. A tired, almost laugh touched her mouth. He crossed to her, tore a strip from his bandana, and tied it gently beneath her jaw. His knuckles brushed the pulse there, fast, alive, stubborn. Owen climbed down at last and dropped the pistol before coming nearer. He stopped a few feet away, as if some invisible line barred him. I'll testify, he said. About the debts, the traitor, the sheriff, everything. Then I'll take what comes. Maren looked at him for a long time. Eli said nothing. Some reckonings belonged only to blood. At last she answered. You don't get my forgiveness tonight. Maybe not ever. But you will tell the truth. And you will hear every name your fear harmed. That's the only road from here. Owen nodded once, tears bright in the dying light. They rode back after dark with Pike's body tied over his own saddle and the map case safe in Eli's bag. Church bells started before they reached town, not in alarm now, but in summons. Lanterns flared across Main Street. Townsfolk gathered in a ring while Maren laid out the papers on a barrel and read the names aloud. One by one, secrets cracked open. The sheriff went gray when he heard his own name. Jonas took the badge from him without ceremony and handed it to the circuit deputy who arrived at dawn from the next county over. The traitor was dragged from his bunk and put in irons. Pike's surviving riders were chained for transport. Dry Hollow, for the first time in years, saw the rot under its own floorboards and did not look away. Morning found Eli in the livery, saddling his bay in the blue hour before sunrise. Habit told him to leave once the work was done. He had built too many years out of departures. Maren stepped in carrying the leather map case and her mother's Bible. She had changed into a plain brown dress. The bruise on her wrist remained, but the fear in her bearing did not. Running? She asked. Considering it. Cowardly habit for a man who talks so big in auction yards. He smiled despite himself, and it changed his whole face. Town looks steadier now. You'll do fine. I know. That's not why I came. She held out the map case. Jonas wants help rebuilding the feed store. Widow Beale says the schoolhouse roof tried to kill us and therefore deserves repair. And I was thinking Dry Hollow could use a freight office with honest ledgers, fair routes, and no bought men. My father's maps could finally be used clean. He looked at the case, then at her. You offering me work? I'm offering you a chance to stop mistaking loneliness for justice. She touched the bandana at her throat. Mercy isn't ownership, Eli, but it can be a beginning. He stood very still. Then, slowly, he lifted the saddle from the bay and set it back on the rail. Weeks later, travelers passing through Dry Hollow would see new timber rising where the feed store had burned and a posted notice listing fair freight rates in Maren Vale's careful hand. They would hear Jonas's hammer ringing beside Eli's through the morning light. Some would ask about the scarred cowboy and the woman who had turned a torn blue dress into an apron. Old Widow Beale always answered the same way. $2 didn't buy her, she'd say. One question set her free. And at sunset, when the day softened and the town's long fear finally loosened its grip, two names could be seen carved into the rebuilt livery beam while swallows wheeled home through gold light above Dry Hollow.